Have someone from finance, so Keith manages the costing and all that, so I'm not too much into that. It's not my area of expertise. But what I wanted to present here is the concept. So the problem that was assigned to me was to solve a problem with, first of all, compliance, which I presented compliance already, but for calc, having multiple customers or clients trying to use calc using one system. So the challenge with those series and the challenge that Cloud SMB has, and for them the workaround has been to create what they call pods, is when you have more than one customer wanting to use those series, what they do, the overhead comes out with the ability to map products to O series and then be able to load all those products in the O series cache. Okay, so for Cloud SMB, the workaround was to create small versions of O series and share them across a number of customers, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the biggest part they have is I think they share about with 10 customers. Now, when you start saying that you want to kind of have unlimited sharing, the complexity comes in how you're going to manage the product mapping. Okay. Right. So the idea here, so this is one version. There's another version that I haven't actually drawn out. I've been working with Jeff Bill, with Jeff Bill in our series, with these ideas, some of these ideas. So here, the idea here pretty much is any customer, look at it as the workflow built like this. If I'm customer XYZ, I want to start using this system. The first thing that would happen would be is you provide your SKUs that you want to use. So there would be like a UI, a small UI that would map your SKUs to a set of SKUs, maybe using the Amazon AWS standard or Google standard, or even what we have here at Vertex. So once that mapping is done, the mapping is pretty much a provisioning process. So you take your SKUs, you have a list to what you are going to map to, and then you use the same process that we use here to map customer data, product data to the product master by pushing a request into that queue that you see there around number 3. So once you put that in that queue, you're going to have a list of your SKUs and your mappings that will be taken in and would be mapped in our series. Once that mapping is done, you get a response back. So once the O series mapping is done, you get we'll do an extract from O series. We shall go to O series and extract all rates for those mappings. So for example, if I'm selling wine, we map that wine to a product category. O series is going now to know that mapping. And then what we'll do is we have 2 ways of pulling out rates in O series. They have an infrastructure called retail transaction extract. That's a process you can run and it will give you the rates. The other way, which hasn't been done here, is to use Hadoop to take all your SKUs, then do a permutation, and in other words, the permutation would really would run APIs to O series and get the mapping in XML. We convert that mapping into a CSV. Bring it back to the queue and load it in the Redis cache. Did I lose anybody? So the general idea, the flow would be like this. New customer, you have your SKUs, you are given a product category mapping, a standard product category mapping that we have. You map your SKUs to that. Mm-hmm. O series has a way of importing that already built in our series. I've talked to them. They said at some point they can have an API whereby if you can do it on an API level, but here is just a packaging, put it on that queue, that mapping happens into a series. Once that mapping gets into a series, O-Series has a utility, which I'm not recommending here, that you can use to extract rates from O-Series. It's called the Retail Tax Extract, RTE. But my suggestion here is to use Hadoop because once I know all the SKUs that I have, I know all the jurisdictions, I can pretty much simulate, write a lot of, do a permutation across the SKUs and jurisdiction and do calc APIs against O-Series, the current O-Series, the SOAP APIs, or now the REST, I think, and get the rates back. So either way.
I have some fine point questions, but I just want to make sure everyone else followed the flow there.
Okay.
No, okay. What about where there are tiered taxes or max taxes, where you're building the rates?
Because when you follow, that was a big thing with Jeff Bill too.
Right.
When you look at retail tax extract, actually it gives you the rates with the max and means.
Okay, so when you ran it through Hadoop, for instance, it would have to produce permutations of those different tiers.
Yes, of those, but it's a limit. Okay, and that's where Jeff had a concern. I'll never be able, no one will ever be able to produce rates for every conceivable O-Series hierarchy.
Okay.
Okay, so we're thinking about get the rates for each jurisdiction and then take into about 4 parameters, which there are 4 parameters that deal with mean and max. That's it. Mm-hmm. And RTE does the same thing.
Right.
So I asked him that, okay, who else, if you look at our current infrastructure, who else, how many people use more than just these? He could not give me an answer. He says no one has ever done the analysis.
Yeah, it would be.
And the only people who do a lot of complicated calcs, like Apple, like Amazon, we don't have that data.
Right.
So no one has it.
Okay.
But my assumption is I don't see, because I know for sure the research I did with Cloud, Cloud uses the retail tax extract, and they have 2 customers. One of them is Michael's, mm-hmm. and they're fine with it. So I'm thinking that those exceptions are like maybe 2%, but no way to prove it.
We have the data, so we could sort of make an estimate based upon, the tiers that were in there. But okay.
Okay, but that is assumed.
I get it.
So that's where. So this is one version.
The point is that it's doable to create something.
Yes.
That's not going to be a permutation on top of a permutation.
Right.
Okay.
It's doable. So the general idea here is use because in the financial industry, Bloomberg revolutionized how to get market data. So he built an infrastructure data center that publishes market data to trading systems, right? Trading systems subscribe to Bloomberg. There are other providers of market data. Some get from both. So for me, I'm using O-Series almost like a Bloomberg feed of data. It's a black box. If it ever goes away, this architecture still works because someone else will provide that information. And the reason why I went this direction is the idea that O-Series is going to be broken down into microservices, I think, in my opinion, is not going to happen soon.
So walk me through. We have somebody. Let's say we have pay tech company, right? That we have an integration with. Let's just say PayPal, right? So now PayPal has a user who is selling widgets for $5, right? They've got a transaction. They're selling it from California and shipping it into Pennsylvania. Walk me through what are all of the API calls that hit here, let me finish.
Okay.
Walk me through like the complete life cycle of what has to happen with this system and how it flows for that transaction to be completed.
Okay, so let's assume the user, the customer is, the company is called ABC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that customer is selling products, right?
Right.
Okay.
So we said right. So it's right. So we said okay. Company is ABC.
Yeah.
Okay. We
Yeah.
said they're selling widgets, right? So
Yeah, widget 1 and widget 2.
r-
Just pick two products. Let's say the SKU, they only have 2 SKUs of 2 products to make it easy. There could be a million products, it doesn't matter.
okay. And the SKU here is 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
and widget 2 SKU is X, Y, Z.
Okay, I'll take that. So what would happen here is this company, in this scenario, this company will be responsible to map this to a product category.
How are they doing that?
Okay.
Like from here,
So what will happen is we'll supply a list, just like if you look AWS, Amazon, Google, they have a published list of product categories. So for these customers, we will supply a list of product categories from Vertex.
so we're not helping them do that here.
No, not in this. I'll get to that. We are not helping them. So in other words, they have 2 ways of doing it, right? In the architecture, there's a UI there. They can set up and map directly, okay? But what Jeff Bill had suggested is we can give them a standard list of product categories that we support, which you can add on. So on their side, they'll just say, okay, this maps to this category, that maps to that category. Then once we get this, once we get, yes, let's say category 1, category 2, we can take this file as an input.
Right,
Okay.
but this diverges pretty substantially from what we've been talking about and what we talked to EPAM about, right?
No, I'm presenting to you, this is something that I've been working with them. With EPAM, I don't know what you want to do. I think you want to do an automated mapping of product categories, right? That is a topic of its own. I have ideas on that, but that's a topic of its own. Here, I'm not assuming. So here, what we have, I'm trying to use what we have here, or series, right?
Right.
So the way we do it is, they get a list of these categories, they do their mapping. So they're responsible for mapping, either using a UI, which is supplied there in the management UI in number 1. That is option 1.
So can I just back up a second, because I just want to understand, right?
Yeah.
So this is an architecture for somebody else. This has nothing to do with our project then, right?
It is digital API for Kish and
Right.
Satish.
Okay. Do we have an architecture for the the project that we've been working on in labs?
For me, they're one and the same.
But okay.
They're one,
But-
to me, they're one and the same.
Right, but this isn't the one that we spec'd out, right? Because it's
No,
a
but how, I don't know what you expect out on product. I've always held one position on products. What I've had around, and John can correct me, what I've had around, that you are trying to find a way to automatically categorize products, right?
Well, yeah, we're trying to make it as
Yes, but I don't think it's easily doable. Okay, that is my.
Just pause. I think that's a third project.
That's a third
honestly. I
project?
don't think that plays into this specifically. It might be added in later. Correct me if I'm wrong, Led.
Well, right, but we had talked about having an API for the mapping, right? For mapping products, so that it's that isn't like we pass them a list and then they do it on their end.
I
and-
thought there were 2. One we could do an import, and one that we could actually have a UI that allow them to do hand mapping. That was my understanding.
But even this has an API. Let me first go through this, then you can make your comments, okay? So one is UI, okay, which is a small UI. The second one is really a list that we pass on or pass in. I've already discussed this with O series. The other one, once they could use that list, or we can build an API can be built whereby the user knows the SKUs, they know the category, so they can run an API that show me all categories that O series has. Okay, and then they can run an API SKU by SKU and map. What is not part of this? What is not part of this is that automated mapping of products. That is not part of my scope here.
Right.
Okay.
I understand that.
So you can take a UI, which is in number 1.
Right.
You can provide a list, which I'm showing in number 3, that queue. And if you look at that queue takes a product update, that is a list. So we have that and we have that. And this I've discussed about an API here that will list this. And you already know your SKUs. And if you wanted to map this to that, you can do it by API, but you're responsible, the customer is responsible to write the code to do the mapping. What I don't address in this architecture is anything of automated product mapping.
Right. No, I understand. I mean, there's a separate function for that, but we need a way for them to be able to find the correct category and to map it via an API.
Yeah, that is covered.
Right.
So UI, import, and API.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. But that's why I asked the question, because you were saying we were going to give them a list of the tax categories, but those are volatile. They change update to update. So it would have to be done through an API call.
No, they can do it by API, but it will change. That list will change.
I believe the list is solely extended. We never retire categories.
Okay. But this is what I was saying. I'm just trying to understand exactly how this is expected to work. Right? If we just give them a list, like we say, here's the documentation, here's the list, it will be wrong quickly, right?
No, because when I've spent a lot of time on those product categories. When you go and look at Google, okay, and Amazon, actually, they have a list of categories, and many vendors out there actually are starting to say that if you're mapping anything, use the Amazon or Google category. They're pretty consistent. I mean, if you look at it, it's going to have automotive, beverages, and so on. It is really very difficult to change. I mean, let's say for textile, someone may introduce some kind of wool or something that is not there, but it's not really going to change.
Right, but we do change the taxability categories in the monthly updates. Our taxability categories change in the monthly updates, right?
What I thought for me, the change, I don't know the detail about that, but I thought that had to do with the rates and jurisdiction and all that, right? Not necessarily the category itself.
Again, I think this is a question we should ask, since there's some doubt here, but I believe that the old categories will be kept so we don't blow people up. We don't make data changes that will blow people up on their mappings.
Every customer would have to change their
Right.
mappings every month.
Right. We just extend them so there's new categories that are supported. That is my belief. We may occasionally go back if there's something funky with one and fix it, but that would be trauma to our existing customer base. That's my belief. We can validate that, though.
Yeah, no, but we have to not think about our current customer base, because this is a different product, right? So like if we think about how things would affect our current customer base.
I don't understand why that matters. It's still the principle that we use in our tax research. That's what I'm talking about, not customers. It's the tax research philosophy.
But my point is, we're adding new categories to make the calc more accurate, right? So as things come in, so we have now a tax that Philadelphia implements that says if you use mango juice in top of sugar in a soda, that we tax it differently, right? So now you have a new category for sodas that include mango juice in it, right? If we've shipped out
list, a fixed list to the customer, kind of as we do with on-premise software, it becomes out of date
No,
potentially.
but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here, right? And I'm not saying staying so much on a product, right? There's a way. There will be an API, and this I discussed with Jeff Bill. There will be an API that will list the product category.
Right.
And if there's an update, right, that API can handle that. Really, for me, the core of my presentation, there are people here who know these categories and how that works way better than I do. All I'm trying to show in my case here is to say that this API, this architecture, is going to have these three ways of handling.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
I feel like though we're trying to architect this and it's crossing three different sets of requirements. You've got, like, we're talking to the current commercial dev team who's thinking in terms of, how we have built things historically. And we've got Keith and Satish who are doing some strategy work, and then we've got the actual project that we're trying to build, right? Which is what's been going on in labs. And from what you're drawing, I don't think they're the same thing.
No, they're the same thing. What I'm showing here, so for me, when I was given this problem, I made the only thing, I made a decision that O-Series is not going anywhere. So I have to talk to the current O-Series. There's no way you can do anything around calc without talking the current O-Series. There's no single way. Because you have to understand how products work, you have to understand how the current calc works, even if you're if you see here, everything has been changed, totally. We're not using the current calc here. What I'm presenting here is going to be a new calc will have to be rewritten. But I'm using O-Series as my source of data. That's it. I'm using O-Series as my source of data because I know if you take out initially, even Satish and Keith wanted to do an architecture without O-Series or without Vita that is going to be with microservices that scales.
Yeah.
You'll never rewrite O-Series. It's not going to happen. I'll be way retired before that happens. So I'll be presenting theory here. So what I've decided, if you look there at number 5, is I'm using O-Series. O-Series is just a data pump here that gives you your calc. It's not in play at all. So once you get the rates, let's assume some way we are getting into the rates and we can go back to products. So O-Series pushes these rates back.
So have you seen the doc that we put in front of EPAM for how we want to build out the platform?
No. Which one?
If you
Well,
guys
it was
saw-
presented, I don't know if you're on the WebEx, we can share it with you physically, but
Yeah, but-
it's here, I have it up actually, just for reference, that's where we were talking about the different
No, that one I saw where.
APIs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but those are the detailed APIs, right?
well, the ones you're referencing,
No,
1, 2,
I'm
3 on the
referencing-
whiteboard are essentially the first 2 on this stateless tax calc slide. So they do align in my view, but
Yeah, those APIs that I'm using the word API there in general. There could be even 50 of them.
yeah, you
Because
can break it down into smaller.
One is going to
increments.
list. One is going to tell you what has changed. Yeah. So
Yeah, get posts.
I'm putting it together. I'm just saying API. So the APIs are there, right? But the point here that at least I want to push across is that a user has to do some kind of registration. They have to provide a list of their SKUs. There has to be some mapping, whether it is by UI, whether it is by import, or whether it is by API. What I've taken it a little bit further is to talk to the O-Series people to see whether they can also provide some APIs to see that product categories have changed and so on. So those APIs could be, like I said, maybe 50, or we may write some other ones. But the general idea is
Let's go.
okay. The general idea is that the customer data comes into here. Some API requests are run to get the rates out there, or whether we use retail tax extract, that goes back, that data goes back. Now, that data then is loaded into a cache, okay? This is memory in AWS, okay? This is going to just have just have the SKU, the product category, those parameters, min and max, the rate, the jurisdiction. So when a user tries to pass through a transaction, what is going to happen? The first thing that is going to happen, we are going to write some API that will do a GIS tax area. So from the transaction, it's going to determine the tax area, whether it is from the shipping address, whatever the criteria is that. I'm making it very general. All I'm saying here is get a tax area using the current logic, right? That logic is complicated, but get a tax area. You get that tax area, in this table, based on what we pushed back, you're going to query this here to get your tax rate because you have the tax area. And you have the tax area, jurisdiction, all that stored here already that you got from our series.
The tax area lookup, is that also coming out of the Redis cache, or is that some other mechanism?
No, the tax area, there are two ways. Actually, I look at both. Either, initially I wanted to put in the Redis cache, but Jeff said the logic is not only by zip code.
Okay.
There's so many things.
So just boiling it down to zip.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if we boil down to zip, we can put it in the cache.
Right.
But he was saying that the current logic they have is going to take the zip. It's going to take, he said about 5 other things. So what I suggested is we take whatever that logic or series has, because it's better than zip, and we build it here.
So a new component?
A new component.
Okay.
And the calc is a new component. The only
Yeah,
thing,
I realized that was going to be.
the only thing is with this calc now, this calc is just getting the rate from here and multiplying just like anything. So it's just, let's say I'm selling a soda, it will go here, it will say, okay, I'm buying a soda, it's being shipped to Fred in New Jersey. What is the tax area for Fred? It knows the tax area, it will query by tax area, by SKU, and get that rate from here. And then and then multiply by whatever that rate is, and it is done.
All right.
So 2 modules will be built. These 3 actually, that. But they are simple.
But I'm still trying to follow what happens during monthly updates, right? So things change, right?
Okay.
So you're mapping the product to a tax category once, but the rates change all the time, right?
No.
Not necessarily, well, rates.
What?
I would say rates
Not
are far
every rate,
rates are
right.
far more volatile
Yes.
than the categories would be, but yes.
Yeah, but
it's
I'm
not
I'm
massive.
But I'm not mapping once, as I said. There's the first time.
Just walk them through what a monthly update would look like.
Okay. So what would happen is, like I said, the first time, let's say someone sets everything up by UR.
Yeah.
Okay? Right? That is going to get to our series. Right? Do you want me to go through how it gets to our series, or you want to go through the update?
You're going to store it in a no series instance.
Yes.
I had a
Which
question
would be-
about tenancy on that, but okay, it's going to
Okay.
go into a no series
It's
instance.
going to go into an series instance, right? Now, what we've discussed is there's going to be APIs. Let's say, so this person, let's say, was selling, is selling 4 different types of wines, right? All those were mapped at the beginning when we started. They already know series, and the rest and everything were extracted and were put in this Redis cache.
Yes.
Now this person starts to sell a 5th bottle of wine. There are two things that could happen. Is that 5th bottle, is that type of wine, does it fall in the same category as the previous wine that you were selling? If they fall in the same category, all that person has to do is to run an API, and the API will automatically go update here and pull the rates back.
Right. So, but my question was, so they mapped the product category, right? Which I have another question on that. That goes into O series. It pushes the rates up to the cache.
Yeah.
You're doing the calc outside of O series, right? So the
The
calc,
calc is coming out of here.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Out of a series.
Right. The calc is happening outside of O series, right? So now the rates change inside of O series, right? Now what happens?
No, there's always this cache, right? in all these systems, right? These caches it's not going to be 100% real time. It will never be.
That's not what he's asking.
Yeah.
He wants to know on a monthly update, the O-Series rates and rules are going to be updated.
Yes.
I probably can walk you through this. We're going to, on the back end, we're going to trigger a process where all of the O-Series instant databases are updated with the new rates and rules and tax categories for that matter. At that point, it will push out a new instance of the permutated tax rates into the Redis cache. So it'll replace it essentially. So now those will just pump through as part of the monthly update cycle. Additionally, the new categories that may be available should be then available through the API over here for new products to be
That's
mapped
correct.
against. So you can, when a new product gets mapped, they will say, okay, what's the category? Well, the new ones will be there in that request. So that'll be really a callback to any O-Series instance would have the same exact category list, right?
That's exactly what we agreed with.
Right.
We're going to have like a number of O-Series instances here, like 5 behind a load balancer, but they're going to be the same.
What
Same
about the
category.
tenancy though? And did that answer your question, Len?
Yeah, I mean, I would have concerns about it, that there's, seems to me that it could get out of sync pretty quickly,
We always have this issue with databases in the cloud. You're going to have a period of some window of vulnerability, and we can do it in an intelligent way where we roll things over. It's sort of like an A/B process where it's just a DevOps thing, which cache
Actually,
instance they point at or something.
All this here is pure DevOps.
Right.
Pure DevOps. And I'm going to add another scenario that Jeff brought up. There are some customers who do not like the updates.
They want to validate them, you mean?
No, they don't want to apply updates like every month.
Oh.
Okay.
No, I know, but
Well,
this is
I think we take that off the table for this approach. Right
Well, if
now.
I could just hold on, because we're not talking about our historic customers here. We're not. So like,
But we're talking about how O-Series works, and if we're going
No.
to use O-Series,
right? I know, but and I don't mean to interrupt, Nancy. I'm sorry. It's just we've kind of gone through this. Yes, we may use O-Series for some of the functionality, but I think we need to take a step back from thinking about this as O-Series and thinking about customers as our customers, right? We have to think about it strictly in terms of what it is that the new product is going to do, and then see what we can leverage, right?
No, O-Series cannot be out in any design. It cannot be out. What I've done is to take it out of the calc, to take it out of the actual calc.
Hold on,
Yeah.
I got it. But this is what I'm saying. There's different groups and saying different things. For our purposes, we have to think about it as, yes, we don't need to worry about O-Series at all. We need to first figure out what we need to build, all right, to find the right product market fit in the right scale, and then see what we can leverage, and then look at what's viable. Like, if we're starting from the position of we have to use O-Series, that's exactly how cloud went about their business, right? And exactly how we ended up with pods. And I feel
No.
But he's decoupled
No.
so significantly. You might as well call it a black box.
Yeah.
It's really a data store.
It's
It's really a data
It's
store.
just a data store. I disagree. I spent a lot of time here. What cloud did, you won't even have time to do it. What cloud did is they tried to use O-Series for the actual calc. And Jeff and Brent have another version, which I didn't even put here.
This is really smart.
I'm
sorry.
This is really separate. This is just a feed, a data pump, and we're using O-Series because there's nothing else. If you found something that can give us rates and you build it, it will work. That's why this is separated. Everything, all I'm saying is that in this cache, you are going to be putting your rates and whatever your search criteria for your product is going to be right here in cache, and you're going to look it up here and do the calc. That's what I'm saying. I just put here O-Series because where are you going to? How else are you going to do it? You're going to build something new here?
Label it X, and just it's a data store for rates and rules.
Yeah,
and
it's
your
just a
mappings.
data store.
How it gets out into the Redis cache is all mechanics.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to depict now. You see here, this data lake is I'm assuming that in the new way we may want to store right now. Quotes I think are not really are not really stored, persisted in any data store at this point. I'm making an assumption here that if we are doing this new architecture, we want to store almost everything so that we can do some analytics on top of it. That's why it is there. All the other things like notifying, auditing are just processes on top of it. But what I'm trying to present here is that we're going to write a few modules which are like figuring out a tax area given a transaction, a simple calc that does a lookup from Redis cache instead of going after O-Series directly, okay?
Mhm.
And we are going to have a DevOps process that will take information from a customer either using the UI or using a list or an API and generate rates and push them back into this cache. The current whole series has a challenge is once you load everything in cache, you cannot easily go and update. There are some challenges, I think, in updating caches and so on. That's what.
But we'll just work that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I just keep going back to, I'm trying to understand how the monthly update process would work here. That we'd be pushing up potentially, billions of update records every time we update a tax rate.
No, whatever changes.
Yeah,
You
it's
can
up,
update whatever
yeah, the
changes.
monthly updates are diffs, they're deltas, so we could
Yeah.
do a delta push.
No, I understand, but it still could be in the billions.
No.
Oh, even if it were, what's the big deal?
Well,
Billions isn't a huge number.
Let me say it this way.
Okay.
It's not that we have to use O-Series. We have to use
Yeah.
the tax data that Vertex
Oh,
reports, which comes
absolutely.
in O-Series format, Q-Series format, and
Yes.
L-Series
Let's use
format.
Q. Sorry.
But in order to use the data a different way or not use O-Series, our whole data management team would have to come up with a new.
No, absolutely.
So
But this
that's
is
why
why.
I'm saying we have to use O, or
Right,
because
right. But we had
have to
drawn
have
out,
the-
John. You and I had drawn out before, like an architecture, which used an approach where we took the light footprint, and this was something that Mike Guth had suggested, right? Of using the light footprint, right? Using O-Series for the calc, but using them as calc only, so stateless calc engines, and then you can auto scale those.
Yeah.
So you have a load balanced, geographically distributed set of calc engines, all right, which do the calc piece, right? So this way you would have common database between all of them, no config information stored there, all right? So now you have to replicate, so we figured maybe 100 instances globally would handle every transaction that Visa processes in a day.
But Lenny, you're confusing me. At some point, you are saying that you want to do things differently without O-Series. Now you seem to be saying that you have an architecture that now, because I can go into an architecture that now uses O-Series 100%, which Jeff and Brent have suggested, which also I think you mentioned a little bit of it in a way.
Yeah.
But
when we
I'm getting
talked the other
confused
day.
whether at some point you don't see, you're kind of, maybe I'm misunderstanding. When you're looking at this, you seem not to like O-Series and the updates. But the architecture you're talking about is even worse, because if you're going to be using many versions of O-Series like that, and you're doing the calc straight to O-Series, because Jeff also suggested an architecture like that I've not drawn. But that means that you're going to have a load balancer and many versions of O-Series. Your update problem is the same, even worse.
If you have 100 identical instances of
Yeah,
O-Series,
you still have to update each one of them independently.
well, they don't store any data. You can
No,
The monthly update is
the monthly-
still applied on the light footprint. It's in this, you can tell
Right.
where
Right.
it sits.
the light footprint needs a full version of O-Series where all the mappings are and all
Yes.
the information is, and then it's extracted from there
Yes.
and put into the light version.
right.
So you'd have to have one major, you'd have to have a full version of O-Series
Yes.
running where the mappings are. So that's customers, there has to be product mappings.
Well, that was the architecture. And I'm sorry, Nancy, because this was something John and I had discussed. So it's like we're missing kind of pieces where
It's what we talked about on the whiteboard downstairs, where the product categories are outside. Do you remember that?
Yes, but yes, so we'd have to come up with it. Yeah, we'd have to have our own product categories that are mapped to O-Series product categories
Right.
that people can pass in.
Yes.
Yes.
And Jeff has that, but that architecture, the problem with that architecture, now this goes away, right? Okay, so look at that architecture, it's actually the same as what you see. The only thing that goes away is where you have this Redis cache, you're gonna have that mapping layer
Right.
that you're going to do custom that maps to a series, right?
There's
But
another
that
series.
calc, you don't, all these go away. When you do the calc, you're gonna have many O series here, but you're going to go directly to those O series.
Right.
But then that's where I'm getting confused, because when I started off here, you were saying that you want to do things differently, but there actually that solution just improves in the way you are mapping, but now you are fully O series. The updates that you're talking about stay in place. Because I can draw that one out.
It's a variant of what cloud is doing. It's really just a variant of what cloud is doing.
Yeah, it's a variant of what cloud is doing. Maybe better than what cloud is doing, but it's a variant of what
Gets
cloud
away
is
from
doing.
the pods,
Yeah.
but you still, because it can pull that data out, but now you're buying yourself a new service. Whenever you make an API call, you have to do what I call data enrichment. So so now there's 2 calls in the calc, so it's going to perform more slowly, first of all. And secondly, you don't get away from that O-series phalanx out there that you have to manage on different regions and such. It's cleaner that it doesn't have state of customers.
All right. So we can draw that one out. I didn't really, he suggested, so I can, but it's not gonna make that difference. So what I'll need is I'll get from you because they were talking about that idea of building something in the middle to do the mapping.
Right.
Okay, so that idea will be introduced somewhat here. I don't know how it will be represented.
I would really like to see the concept that we had talked about put together. I really would like
Well,
to
that's
see.
what he's saying. He can put that diagram
Yeah,
together.
I would like to see.
But don't expect too much. It is gonna be this diagram. Let me tell you the difference that is going to happen.
It's fine.
No, it's gonna be this diagram. The only thing here, I'll change this to be load balancers here, many values
Right.
of our series.
Right.
And you're gonna give me that algorithm, how we store the stuff over here. It
Yep.
doesn't have to be a Redis, it can be a database, whatever you
It
want.
should be database, yeah. Well, it could be Redis, actually. You're right.
Yeah, whatever.
I didn't think
it's,
of
it's
it.
gonna, it's gonna be the same thing, but what I'm not understanding here, what is not clear to me, from what you're saying, you kind of were saying you're against using O series, but you are for O series. That is confusing me. Because that's also, Satish and Keith were also like that at the beginning.
But that's not. But that isn't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to draw the architecture without thinking about O series, and then look at what we can leverage, right? So that means that if we're looking at looking at what do we need, right? What are the API calls? How would it work? How can we do this so that each of the APIs can scale independently, right? Then once we have that, what can we leverage?
No, but we have that. No. This is not complicated on Calc, right? They're just Calc just does a Calc API. The APIs that we are missing here that O-Series doesn't have are really APIs on managing categories and all that kind of stuff. Okay, those APIs we don't have. They already have some equivalent of, they have some API for getting the tax area, all these tax rate things they have already. So for me, I don't see what you're going to get out of that. Like I say, I'm telling you right now, the API is really Calc, getting a tax area. It's not that complicated. You get a transaction, you figure out the tax area. Once you figure out the tax area, you run your Calc. That's it. The management of products and mapping, that has not been built into an API yet. But that's a totally different line of analysis altogether.
But you've already said that it exists on the whiteboard. Right?
Yes, yes.
It is in that API gateway. He's got those things. That is exactly what you're asking for, Len. We're really talking about what's under the hood. It is really where we seem to have a difference. And if you could black box everything behind the API gateway, and just know that it's going to be fast, and we're going to get the good DevOps practice support behind it. I don't, it's just a matter of figuring that out. So whatever it is, if we just use the raw rates and rules themselves and somehow put the Redis cache up without, we don't need any system.
Yep.
Pretty inaccurate. It's been pretty inaccurate.
Hadoop may be able to do it.
Yeah.
Just pull the monthly update data in through Hadoop, permute their saved categories into the Redis cache. There's nothing. There's no back-end component.
There is no back-end component if that was the case.
I mean, we could look at that, but there's like 10 million ways to solve that problem right now. That's the issue here.
Yeah, for me, really, here what I was trying to say is, actually, I was trying to do a total new way of thinking that I thought you were referring to, is really to take O series out of the calc business, make an O series as some data pump or data source. That is really what I'm trying to show here. And then you do something totally new. What you're suggesting is really putting O series back 100%. Actually, you probably need different people. You need O series people to really design that thing. I mean, there's not much I can provide any, because that would be 100% O series.
Yeah, you're just putting it behind the API gateway, and you're.
But it's not just using O-Series, because we're not storing any customer data or configuration in O-Series at all. It's just a calc engine.
No, you cannot, but even if you're doing a calc engine, you are kind of storing that data. If you're going to use the way O-Series does calc, right? It needs to know, it needs to know, like if you're going to do a calc with a SKU, O-Series has to reconcile.
But that's what I'm saying is we wouldn't. That's I keep getting interrupted, so it's not getting through here. But we wouldn't be passing in a SKU. We'd be passing in a generic taxability category that is how it calculates it. So you've got a category, an amount, seller location or buyer location, that goes into the calc, all right, and gets a result. So you'd have 100 instances of light footprint O-Series, all identical, right? So you can take and very easily replace 100 instances, flip them, right? Spin up 100 identical instances, right, that are cloned, kill the other ones, and you've got your update, out there through everything, right?
I get your point.
So
I get your point, and you can do that, right?
Right. So then,
if you do that, all this is out, right?
Yeah. You gotta let me finish talking, right? So in that case, right, you've got what we're using O-Series for is strictly only for count, right? They're all identical. We're not passing in any type of custom configuration information there. So we're leveraging the calc engine capabilities of O-Series, and then at that point we don't need to push the updates out through the cache for every single combination of SKU and product, right? All of the calc information and the rates just stay right in those O-Series instances that are all identical, right? So that's really, really what?
But when they change, you have to do an extract from the main O-Series for the light and put a zip file out.
Yeah, well, right. We'd have to propagate it through the 100 instances. That's why I was saying, if you take and you push it out to an instance, clone it 100 times, however we do it, right? I mean, you're talking about 100 identical things, right? Whether they're containers or EC2 instances, however it gets built out. There are 100 identical things, so you'd push it out once and then clone 100 of them, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but that solution is then a 100% O-Series. I mean, that is out of my scope. I mean, there's nothing for me to add to that solution, right?
It's not 100% O-Series because we don't have any of the configuration stored in those instances.
No, but that's how O-Series, you are relying on O-Series almost 99% still. Yeah.
There's the problem.
I put time in here. I'm not getting this thing. Even actually, what you're saying right now, that you're going to pick one category and you're going to map it. You need to prove that it can actually work. What I'm showing you, I've proven. I've taken time. I've been 2 months. I've been doing this for 2 months. I've met experts on products, over 6 of them. So even what you're suggesting that you can do 100 of them, the memory intake, you really have to at least sketch out some, because I can draw the picture nicely for you, but I prefer that you give me a sample sketch even by hand of what you're expecting.
This is it.
Is it the one?
I think this is it because
Because
I had to draw it.
let me make a point. For me, I think we're going in circles. When I started off with this project, I thought that we wanted to get away from most series. Even in this, making the API calls directly to series. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
That was not
Okay.
anything that
So,
was.
so if it is not your understanding, that is fine. First of all, we need to reconcile it with
Satish.
with Satish and Keith.
Right.
So you maybe.
Well, no, I don't mean to keep stopping, but though, like, if Keith and Satish are talking about something else at a strategy level, we don't need to couple that with what we're doing here. We're not having this tight coupling of what they're thinking, all right, long-term strategy with what we're trying to build now, right? Those are two separate things.
No, but Len, you're saying tight coupling. When you say tight coupling, I think your solution is the one that is tightly coupled.
He's using it at a higher level. It's a business type coupling as opposed to an implementation type coupling.
Okay.
Again, I'm not sure why it matters what's behind the hood. If he can do this as fast as we can do this, why not do what he's saying if it's going to perform better and be more cost effective? But okay.
Well, I'm not saying we can't do this. I'm just trying to raise up what I see as risks, and I feel that I'm not being heard. That this architecture I see is having some weak spots that could be problematic when you go to try to operate it at scale. And I feel like I'm not being heard when I raise those concerns.
No. I heard you clearly, but I totally disagree with you. I heard you very clearly.
Yeah.
I think the architecture is suggesting is even worse off.
Yeah, it's just a professional disagreement.
Yeah,
we can prove
just
the
disagree.
point. We can stand up both architectures and see.
I just disagree that going by using a farm of a series and doing that is going to be better. That is the current. That is an improvement of what cloud has done, in my opinion.
It's not, but I because we're not doing any state information. There's no customer data that goes into O series at all, ever. Period. Right? It just does calc. So if it's only doing calc, right, it can scale independently very, very well. Right? You don't have any problems with scaling it, which is the challenge that we have right now. If you look at the cloud architecture, right, and you and I talked about this before, right?
No.
You-
I have to respond. The cloud architecture does not scale because they tie it to a customer. And the main reason why it doesn't scale is because of the flexibility they're trying to provide on the product mapping.
Can I point one thing out, Len? You've moved the scaling problem from out of O series into this invoice enrichment service. This now has to scale by tenant as opposed to this. It may be simpler to scale this because it's much smaller, but it's still, this has state. Because you have to have their mappings. That's what I'm calling an invoice enrichment service. When the call comes in, it has to come to this enrichment service to get the right category to match up to O series. Then it can call O series. This is much smaller though.
Yeah, but that service is pretty much also, you could use Redis cache or
Yes,
something.
yes,
It's the
yes,
same
you
thing.
absolutely could
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
You pointed that earlier, and I
Yeah.
was like, I hadn't been thinking along that line, but yeah, you could do that.
So, and then you also don't get out, you still have to deal with updates.
Absolutely, you can't get away from updates.
You can't get away.
That's
with
a given.
I think the update thing is something that needs to be worked on separately as a process. It's a DevOps kind of thing or separately, but either way you have to. So those are the only. So I'll share my architecture as something that you can look at. If there are other better ways of doing it, I know for mine, I've taken 2 months and followed through. And actually, I'm going to write a simple API. I've started writing it that I'm going to demo in a couple of ways. So mine, I have proven it through. If someone can prove out another way, that's fine too. Then we pick. You can pick whatever works.
What parameters do you want to tweak? Performance or cost are probably the two main ones that are impacted here. And then maintenance is the other one, so there's 3.
So, again, Jeff, I told you, I think yesterday, Jeff and Brent also have some idea going to those lines of what you're talking about. Yeah. So I tried to, I didn't really push it, but so that's a decision that needs to be made. And then we decide which way to go. But my suggestion is, even with products, what I saw, at least my experience working on the other architecture, everyone comes and says this product maps with this tax category, but once you look at it detail and you really look at a real example, some of the suggestions don't work. So whichever way we go, we need to set up an example, just as you had suggested. Run me through how this is going to work. Let's say I'm a new customer with 1,000 products I'm starting. How is it going to work when I'm adding 2? How is it? So because you could find that maybe mine I know I've gone through, but when I show it, someone could find hold and say, no, that is not working. But even with this one or the one that they were suggesting, we need to have something that we use to run through and prove it through. But for me, for example, one thing that I find challenging to say that you're going to have those many of series instances that are not changing, yeah, but we need to make sure exactly that when the updates are happening that you are not hustling to, because those updates are going to have to get to those 100 instances that are all over everywhere. And
That's just a DevOps concern.
that's what I'm saying. It's
Flipping the switch.
It's a DevOps thing, but also if you're trying to do geographical, you need to worry about how you pair it. Yes, it's a DevOps thing, but then when we do the architecture, we put a lot of emphasis on DevOps also to show that
I would
provision.
hope. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we don't want that blowing up. That would take us
Because
down.
now you have to worry about geographies. Here and there's nothing wrong with that solution. Nothing wrong with that solution. Understand me. Here we are using a cache which is distributed managed service. Now that DevOps handling all that infrastructure is on us.
Yeah, I'm just,
If you want to put that on there.
I'm still not seeing how that is something that's easily maintained and scalable when you're talking about you're going to have to store the product mapping, so the SKUs to taxability categories in O-series instances for every single product and tax category in customer combination, right? And that then has to get pushed out to the cache every monthly update.
Yeah, that is easy. It's a DevOps thing, like you're saying.
Well, as somebody who's done DevOps, I would say it's not an easy thing.
No,
and
no,
that's
no.
that's
Right.
As opposed to plopping a file in a directory on one of the machines and then
Kicking off
to
of
bring, you
load,
have
yeah.
to stop that instance. All their scaling has to
take them offline.
take them all off. You have to stop them all.
It's the same. The issues are
You're gonna
just,
bring up a new.
it's 6 to 1,
image,
half dozen
put
the other.
Put the new file in, or keep one instance, put the new file in, shut it down, bring it back up.
And they've
and
come a
then
long
let it-
way on DevOps with doing A/B. So you leave the old ones up, you bring new ones up in the background, and then you just flip the switch and they come up. It doesn't matter how you've done it. You just flip the switch and the API gateway routes it to the new instances.
right. That's what I'm talking about.
It doesn't matter. Either any of these architectures, you can do exactly the same thing. Just bring it up, flip the switch.
I mean, in my architecture, if you give me a scenario, I can run it through. I mean, I'm going to build the API. I mean, I'm going to prove it out. I started already. Within a couple of weeks, I should be able to take a transaction, look up the area, and do a calc from the cache. That I'll do. The extracts, the O-series extracts, Jeff Bill already showed me how to get them. I've already done it. So, and I can push. So I can prove out my transaction, now I'm not saying that we have to go with this. I'm just sharing my research of what I've done and what I've presented to both Keith and Satish. Now, if there are other ways, yeah, sure. But for me, I don't think any solution is going to be very different from here. So you can change those O-series, the O-series back. I just showed one there. In the one that John just showed, there may be 20 of them or 50 of them over there. The invoice piece will replace that Redis cache, but someone has to walk it through and make sure that everything works.
So how many O-series instances to store for, let's say we have 2 million customers?
2 million to do what?
How, 2 million?
No, there's no resources on O-series, you see. When you look at O-series takes up resources, like in the cloud. Let me finish this time. Like in the cloud, what was happening is, when you load data for product data for a customer and all that mapping, it is stored in memory. That was the overhead. This O-series here, O-series can be configured to put stuff and store it in memory or not. Here I'm using it as a data pump. So once I run it, let's say we use RTE, the retail tax extract, which is being used also by SMB. You can even store 20 million if you wanted to. It's not real time.
He's talking about tenants, though, I think.
What?
How many tenant instances of O-series would you need running? The answer is 0.
0.
Actually.
0.
You'd only need to bring them up if someone wanted to configure a new product code. So you could quiesce them and bring them up just to do that, then do their extract to bring the update, and then take them down again.
So where are you storing the mapping? Just in the cache?
You would store it live in the cache.
Yeah, live.
But it would be persisted behind in an O-series database instance.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But we have database instances would probably be a better question, because you could just bring up any O-series instance connected to that database as the tenant, and then quiesce that O-series instance, just bring it down. As long as it's persisted in some database instance, you're fine.
But you're still talking about a database instance per customer, so 2 million databases.
No, not per customer.
I'm not sure.
No, it's not per customer.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it would have to break down, but there's definitely a way of minimizing the footprint on the database side.
No, that we went through. It's not per customer. The reason why they do it, the reason why cloud can't do it per customer, because for you to get the calc response time you need, not only do you have to persist that information, you need to store it in memory. That is the challenge. If you don't store it in memory, then the request is going to take maybe 2 seconds instead of like 2 milliseconds. But here we're not using O-series for that level of speed. We are just using O-series to provision the rates for that customer. Once it provisions that rate for that customer, it brings back the rates to the cache. We don't even need O-series. So let's say someone didn't even want an update, we can close that gate and we don't even have to touch O-series.
Assuming Redis doesn't go down.
Yeah, but Redis is, the reason why I'm using Redis, but Redis, we also have a copy, right? Redis, we're going to have a copy in S3. We're going to have S3, and that so
makes sense.
We have that. And then also AWS guarantees 99.
Can you add S3 to this diagram, please? That didn't occur to me.
I'll add it.
Didn't occur to me.
I'll add it. It will just get busy, but I'll.
I know, but that's an important point, though.
I'll add it.
So how many databases? We have 2 million customers, each with 2,000 products.
Same database.
It's one database.
One large, very, very large database. The size of how, technically O-series, the way it was designed initially, it had a capability of handling, working with many different types of databases. Right now, that database, right now is, I think they're thinking about using Progress
Postgres, yeah.
Postgres. So I could check, but how big that can get, but I don't think that is a non-issue. The issue with those series and the issue with cloud that you're talking about of scaling had to do with memory, RAM. If you configure, let's say, if cloud could configure O series, and I just got to know that last week. I don't know whether you knew that. Jeff told me that in O series you can configure the calc whereby the product and most of the databases you use for lookup to be all in memory. But you could also configure it not to be in memory at all.
Right.
Okay? In this case, I don't have to have it in memory at all. So I can grow in an unlimited fashion. But if you're doing calc, you will never respond. So O series will be useless. Every transaction would be too slow. I'm using O series here to collect rates, that's it.
Right. No, I got that. I'm still hung up. I just want to understand. Because
Sure.
there are issues here that I feel like we're not addressing those kinds of challenges, which is what does the tenancy look like? So how many databases are we talking about? You're saying there's
one. I handle those issues. Like I said, I'm building an API. How would I be? I'm building the API already, not for you guys to use. At least to prove when I put out an architecture like that, I need to feel comfortable that it works.
right, but
So I've already generated data for about 20 million transactions. So maybe about 100 customers.
right, but I'm looking to understand how does it work when we have 2 million customers.
It will work.
Each.
It will work because those series, I think, first take away O series on the side. Okay, let's first take O series on the side so that we narrow down what we are discussing. If you take out O series, if you can just imagine that rates are coming from some black box called X, let's just imagine that, right? If you take O series out of the picture, do you agree with the architecture that if we put the rates for all our 2 million customers in Redis, okay, let's say we have those rates from somewhere in some phantom way, do you agree that architecture would work? Do you see it as working or not?
No, I mean it could work. I'm just, there. I said I have some concerns that you can get some disconnect. It can get out of sync if you're trying to push everything out. So if you're trying to push out in one shot 2 billion records of updates up into the cache, that can get out of sync.
No. Len, there are ways professionally to do this. You just cannot say that I'm going to push 2 billion updates. You need to keep track of it in an organized fashion, and you need to do. You see at the bottom there are services there, audit, monitor. All those things have to be in place.
No, I understand.
Because
that.
right now, okay.
I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm saying that there are challenges there, and I'm
No, but I don't see any challenge because this architecture I've done, and what I'm using here, for example, the cloud SMB, right, is actually using that dynamic tax extract already. They used RTE, retail tax extract.
Right.
It works. They push it, I think, to about 10 customers.
right
now.
It still doesn't address what my concerns are. I'm not sure how
Maybe
to make.
I'm not clear what your concerns are here. I'm not clear because I think you're saying that there's going to be, at least the one I'm understanding, you're saying that there's going to be a disconnect, the cache may not be up to date and so on.
I say you've got one O series database over there that you're using to do configurations for all of the customers. So 2 million customers, right, into one database, right, with billions and billions of...
No, Len. I'm just giving an example there. If you wanted, if let's say we are going to have 2 million, we can launch more versions of our series on there.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
But then we're getting into pods, just bigger pods.
No.
They're just bigger pods.
Okay,
That's all it is.
you could, but how are you going to do it the other way? The other alternative also has its own way. Here, what all we are doing, right? In our series, right? I think this thing now we should maybe set up another meeting with our series open, right? when you do a mapping in O series, you guys here, you and Nancy are expert on O series because I went through all this. So when you do a mapping in O series, right? So you go to the mapping, you go to the mapping screen in O series. You take a SKU, like you gave an example, you map it to a category. Okay, that information is stored in a database. Okay, O series really does not care who. It's just that code that you get is what is stored in the database. It does not care about who the tenant is.
Right.
Okay, so if you have 1 million of those that are really across multiple tenants, you can still map them and store them. So what Jeff showed me is once you do the mapping, you can extract. Let's say you take one SKU, you map it, you can extract that into a file. It has a functionality to extract it.
Yeah.
They don't have an API. Now in that file, you can dynamically create that file and map. If you know the categories you want to map to, you can create that file and map 1 million or whatever you want. So O series will store that information. Now, for redundancy purposes, if you wanted to support 20 million people, 20 million customers, and you felt one instance could fail, or the provisioning you're doing at the same time, you want to do it more efficiently, then that's where you're gonna come up with some big pads for mapping. But it's not the same pad as what cloud has. The one that cloud has is limited by that memory for the live calcs that you need to do.
Right. I'm saying we've got 2 million customers, 2,000 products each. All right. So what's that? It gives us 4 billion product to taxability category mappings that sit in that one instance there, right? Am I correct?
Yep.
All right. So
No, not necessarily. It could be more than one. It could be one or more.
Right. But I want to know what is it.
No, I don't know. I need to know the volume, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
so it's 4 billion rows,
Yeah.
right? Which represents 2 million customers.
4 billion is nothing. It can be in one.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So that I just want to follow through. Like it's a hypothetical. Let's walk through it,
Yeah.
right? So we've got now 4 billion product mappings in there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we go to update the rates, right? We've got to take and move those 4 billion product mappings with the rate extracts up into the cache when we do that, right?
No. When you update, when you update rates, it's not really like it depends on the categories where those rates have changed. Every update is not going to affect everything.
No, I know. I'm just hypothetically, just
Yeah.
follow with me, right? So
Yeah.
that's a potentiality is we need to push the 4 billion records up into the cache, right?
If you did if it's going to affect every single,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And we've got one database then that's storing everything, right?
Yeah, but that's not a big thing.
If you used Light, you would have to do the same thing. And then every time a customer mapped a record or there was a new customer, you would have to do, you're gonna let me finish this.
Yeah.
You have to do the extract and propagate it to every one of those instances. Every time a customer makes a change,
No,
it
but-
goes to a main version of O series. And the extract comes from that main version of O series and goes to all the Light versions.
Right, but what we had talked about doing was not storing any mapping
All right, well then
information.
the conversation that you guys had just does it. Then-
We had talked
So
about.
there's not 4 million product records in O series, either version that you use. There's no customer information, so it doesn't matter.
Well, in his
About
instance, we're
tendencies.
storing the configuration in O series, right?
Just
So-
configuration.
Right. In this instance, we're storing configuration information in O series for the customers.
You would have to
So-
do that in Light also.
No, well, the way that I had talked about doing it was to say we don't store any configuration information in O series at all. We do the mapping of that outside of O series. We use simulated products, all right, that map 1-to-1 with each of the taxability
You
categories.
can do that in O series. You just have to map them 1-to-1 and tell the customer what the product code is.
Yeah, but that is a configuration still.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But it's not per customer.
Yes.
We come up with the product codes. We map them to the taxability
Yes.
categories.
That's
And
what.
then, right, so
Right.
there's one copy of it.
Right. So that's.
But
what
you can do the same thing here. You can do the same.
But
You
the
can
cu-
do.
the
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be mapped to the customer's SKU. The customer, instead of their SKU,
Would have
would
to
pass
pass it.
our product or taxability driver
Yes.
that it's actually called.
Exactly.
Well,
So
but that would
we're-
require
we're-
them to store it. A
would
small
still have
guy
to
isn't
store
going to be able to write
Yeah,
something to
yeah.
do
Customer,
that.
that would be on the customer to
But
store.
this isn't. But that was the whole point of saying that we're starting with the API, right, which then can be built on by platforms, which then, if we go to a small business solution, we would wrap it and provide that information and abstract it from the customer. So Nancy's exactly right with that's what I was trying to get to, is saying that we don't store any of that kind of configuration information in O series at all.
No, but you store it on this side, on
No,
the
he's
customer
saying
side.
store it on the customer side,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
what an ERP would be able to do.
Yeah.
But that's a whole
That, yeah,
ball of wax.
that is something that someone has to. You're going to. O series is not going to work without some kind of config. You're going to have some configuration stored somewhere.
I think we need to do customer development on whether that's
Here's what
possible
Avalara
or not.
does.
Yeah.
Avalara has a list of their product codes, which we don't have. We have taxability
Right.
and taxability drivers. So they have a product code. We can come up with our own product codes. And then the customer, when they set up Avalara, they put or Shopify, they put their product in, and the Avalara product code. It comes from a list.
Nancy, let me ask you an example. Just an example.
Yeah,
Let's say-
that's-
But there's still a
let's say-
mapping,
let's
but
say-
it's on, it's not
Nancy,
on
let's say
OCR
I have
side.
SKU,
Exactly.
I have SKU wine 1, right? Okay, and this is going to be mapped to beverages
Then-
and wine.
Now my brain's breaking here. Go ahead, Freddie.
This SKU, right?
Right.
Okay, so in our series, you go to that mapping screen. You first create this product somewhere in our series, and then you pull it up and you give it some code, which I'm going SKU1, and then I pull this category.
Right.
Right? Now, how would you do it when you say, this is the product category here,
That is the product category.
okay? Okay, and this is where I spend, time, okay?
And
Now,
then-
what is yellow typing? So how would you do this using the?
SKU wine is what the customer would put in O series as a taxability driver or a product.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What we do is we make our own
okay,
and map it
Yeah.
to that product category. And then the customer, because you can't pass in a product category because that doesn't have
Yeah.
anything. You pass in your taxability driver.
Okay.
But the taxability driver is not their SKU. It's the code we've pre-mapped. So we come up with all the taxability drivers and map them to every existing product.
Thank you.
Code.
Yes.
yeah, but why would you want to take that responsibility to do
I
that?
don't.
We
but-
don't. We
I'm
don't.
not doing it.
They have to do it themselves. We're providing a UI that allows them to look it up and type it into their system, whatever it is, to set that pairing up.
But that, they
This is a-
can't pay, yeah, because they have to pass
This
the
is a
taxability driver.
difference from what we proposed to EPAM, though,
Yes,
because
it
we
is.
actually said we were going to store these mappings for them. So that is a difference.
Well, we can store those mappings, right, inside of a database that's outside of O series.
Right, which is the diagram that I had up earlier.
Yes, right? So it can be completely disconnected. So you can say, we'll store in whatever kind of data store that we want, right? Provide an API where they can optionally, they don't need to, they could store it in their own system, they could store it in an ERP, or they could store it optionally in a data store that we provide as a matter of convenience. But all it is just storing that mapping in some type of persistent data store that they can then call back and ask for it again, right? That's it. But it's not in O series at all. The only thing in O series is the rates and one static mapping of a product or driver to a tax category for each of the taxability categories, so that we can cover the full spectrum of what the options are.
No, but that storage is also going to be huge. It's the same thing. For me, I don't see the difference. The button is shifted.
Wait, hold on.
No, let me. I'm countering what you're saying.
But I think you're countering something that it's not what I'm saying. If we're talking about one instance with one single taxability driver, right, to one product one taxability category, that's a very small footprint, right? That's
Okay.
not.
Let me suggest something, because for me, I'm a pure scientist. I like to see, you see, this mapping that I've shown, I've done a lot of research here. Now, if Nancy or John, can you come up with your theory of, just as I've done this example, right? Because talking about it, we need to make sure that it works and where the storage is going to be. For me, the way I'm seeing, the way you're saying that, because you're going to map, you're going to map a taxability driver to a product category, and then you're going to have to store this stuff somewhere.
Right.
It's the same thing for me. It is shifting.
But it's pre-populated. That's a file that can be exported and imported into any O series instance or somehow made seed data at some point.
Yeah, but what difference? So let me ask this question: what difference does it make if we took in this other architecture, right, that I was presenting? You could still use that as a scheme, right?
Right.
So for me, that is then not an issue. It can be applied in either architecture.
True.
It can be applied in either one.
Makes the
Yes.
Redis cache even simpler.
Yeah, it can be applied in either architecture. So I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know what difference it makes. So if we decided and someone thinks it through, we can still apply it in this same other architecture, because that we can use the same. Where I'm putting that Redis cache there, we can decide that we use that same scheme.
Yeah, we could.
We can decide that we use the same scheme.
Makes-
So for me, it doesn't make a difference. Someone just has to think it through that will work for all. I took this because my knowledge of
I just
what
thought the way
series
that might not work.
my knowledge of what series is limited. So I use the product category. All the 2 months I've been researching this. I've been relying on this. But if someone shows me how that works and that it works well, I can do. If that is the main thing, I can flip that to use. Then you.
Well, I think that's a big step in the right direction.
Okay. So-
because I mean, ultimately, if we're trying to drive the all of the config information through a single O series database, I would have concerns about that for the sheer volume. Like that's not, we would have to test that, and I wonder, what kind of issues we get into with just. I think there are a number of obstacles we could run into there. But if we move that configuration mapping out and use the generic mappings, then yes, we're taking a step in the right direction, I think.
But someone has to think it through with that. I don't know how it works with the taxability driver because I've not done it.
It's dead simple. And I think they already do it in O Series Cloud. They have predefined categories,
Okay.
or products, actually, products, not categories, that you just replace your product with that product, and that product is mapped one for one to a product category.
Right.
Because you can't pass the taxability category through. There's nothing in the API.
So you kind of anticipate what the products that the majority of people would be using. right?
No, you just create there's 1,500 tax categories.
Okay.
There's 1,500 products that have the exact same name.
Okay.
So if you send in this product, you're automatically getting this tax category. So you replace your SKU with this magic code, this tax category whatever, and you pass that in instead.
But for me,
the
that is
product.
not. For me, that's not. So if you did in my architecture here, if you gave me that mapping, right? When I'm doing the permutations, I can use it, and
Sure.
then I'm not gonna push back I'm not gonna really bring back that much data.
Right, the Redis
It's the
cache
same
is going to be
thing.
very small, but
Yeah.
I think you should do it. I think it makes sense from a performance standpoint
Yeah.
to use the Redis cache.
But that is just something that needs to be thought through, and it can be used by either architecture.
Yes.
So the differences in architecture here is where you want to do the calc at that point. Do you want a series? Because in this architecture that you're talking about, the calc is going to come from a series, even though it's going to directly come
The
from
way
a
that we had it drawn on in the whiteboard, yes, it
Yeah.
would be an O series instance.
So that is the decision I have. In this calc here, this calc is not going to come from a series. The rates are going to be, it's not going to come directly from a series. That's the difference. So one can choose which one is more convenient.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's moving closer to sort of a blending of the two approaches.
I think the O series team would actually like what you guys are suggesting. In fact, if that's what you're suggesting, this conversation should not even be more with me, it should be more with them, because they would love that.
Well,
They would really love that. I mean, that is those series 100%, really. But there's not much you're doing different. The only thing is you are just introducing that mapping, and I think that's what Jeff and Brent also were suggesting. The only thing you're just introducing that mapping between the taxability driver and the product. The rest, that is pure O series.
Well, there's a lot more to OC. I mean, you have.
What are you suggesting is more?
Can't get in the word edgewise here. There's a lot more to O series than just the. So just saying that running the calc through O series means it's all O series. It's not really factually correct, right? Because all of the mappings are out, the taxability drivers are out, the GIS is out, the exemptions are out. All of these other things we're not going to do with O series at all, right? So then O series, that's what it's taking all of those things out, which lets you take and create from 1 to 1,000 identical O series instances and run them behind a load balancer and have it work. That's the way that you can have that function. So you could also take and use half a dozen O series instances behind a cache, and that would work too, and that's closer to this. But at the end of the day, right, and you're not, it's not just using O series the way that it is, because O series the way that it is designed to run one instance per customer. We're not doing that. We're not doing exemptions in there. We're not storing categories in there. We're not storing product mappings, tax drivers, custom rules, any of that. None of that we're doing. That's O series. So it's not doing O series justice to say that if we use it for calc, that's just using 100% O series.
Len, with all due respect, I'm confused. I don't know the architecture that you guys are looking for. I mean, I'm saying it as politely as I can say it. I really don't understand at this point. I can't. I'm going to continue with this architecture with Keith and Satish because their requirements are clear. You're probably correct in the way you want to do it, but I have no clue. For me, I don't really see. It could be me missing the point, but I don't understand how this is going to be different. Where I'm getting confused, at some point you want to be away from O series, but on some other words you are with O series. So I think you need, even if it is rough and I can take it down and draw it, you need to draw your vision. And then we'll work from that vision. If John has it, maybe he can share it. I've shared the way I look at it. I've shown you.
No, this is good. I guess my point is,
Yeah.
if Satish and Keith are asking you to continue to work on this, definitely proceed with it. If you're not comfortable using the kind of approach I'm talking about,
No, I'm comfortable. I have to address what you're putting words in my mouth. I'm comfortable.
Well,
Okay?
I think your words where you fundamentally disagree with me, so it's okay though. I mean, I'm not.
No,
The point is, we're talking to EPAM. We're going to get back proposals from them. I think that they kind of get what I'm talking about, so we'll work through it. I just want to make sure we're drawing a distinction between kind of what you're speccing out with Satish and Keith, or with the O series group and what we're trying to build, because those are all separate things,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Okay. So that is a presentation. That is the idea right now. So if you guys have another idea that you want me to look at, I'll look at. But that's it. Okay.
I'm really like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs right now. My theory is that this is an evolutionary discussion that we've just had, and there may be a third option that nobody was considering that's been developed. Marrying the red is catch approach into the externalized configuration.
Wait for the next meeting. Until like a year old, we have started.